Welcome back to Myth Madness. In this season, I cover Persian mythology, and many of the stories I will be covering are from the Shahnameh, or the Book of Kings epic poem. This poem was composed by a man named Abul Qasim Ferdowsi. He completed it in 1010 AD, but he likely started the poem around 977 AD. It is one of the longest epic poems in the world and is today one of the most important examples of Persian literature. Its cultural significance is similar to the Iliad and Odyssey, or the works of William Shakespeare. It tells a legendary history of Iran. It starts with creation and the doings of the first kings, and then covers stories of successive generations of kings and the heroic champions who supported them. It also provides a loose history of Sassanid Persia up to the Arab conquest, but it is the legendary section that I will be referring to on the pod. Ferdowsi used older material to make his poem, much of it from a very vibrant oral tradition of Persian myths, legends, and fairy tales. Many elements of this tradition can be traced back to the time of Zarathustra, or Zoroaster, approximately 3,000 years ago, and references to some of the same hero stories in the Shahnameh can be found in Zoroastrian religious literature. Originally, there does not seem to have been much interest in writing these stories down, or if they were, the manuscripts were not preserved. That changed in the Sassanid period of Persian history, when books like the Quade-Nameh appeared. This book may have likely been one of Ferdowsi's main sources of material, but it is unfortunately lost to history. In the centuries after the Arab conquest, during a time when people were trying to ensure Persian culture didn't disappear, this effort to write down the stories was kicked into overdrive. In the years afterwards, many poets tried to do the same as Ferdowsi, and so we ended up with an entire genre of epic poems telling the myths of ancient Iranian heroes, and artistically inspired by Ferdowsi's Shahnameh. The first part of the Shahnameh focuses on several generations of legendary kings and their conflict with the forces of evil. But during the reign of the king Manuchehr, it's the heroes, the king's various commanders, who leave the background, begin to play a larger role, and are the stars of their own stories. One hero who acts as an intermediate step between these two parts of the Shahnameh is Sam. Sam is the son of the hero Neriman. Sam is the ruler of a land called Sistan, a place in the far east of Persia. Sistan is a real place. In the modern world, it overlaps with eastern Iran and western Afghanistan and Pakistan. In the Shahnameh, Sistan is a province within the Iranian kingdom, and Sam is a skilled and highly valued general in the Persian king Manuchehr's army. And yet, Sam's appearances in the Shahnameh stories are minimal. He is said to be busy leading the army in faraway lands against Persia's evil enemies, the Deves of Mazandaran and Gorgsaran. Sometimes Sam pops into a story to do something, but always hops back into the saddle and rides off to return to his battles. As I mentioned before, Ferdowsi's Shahnameh inspired younger generations of medieval Iranian poets. And in the centuries after the Shahnameh was composed, other epic poems were written that retold stories from the Shahnameh, or expanded upon its material, or focused on one particular character that the poets felt was left out or not delved into with enough detail. Sam was one of the heroes who got this treatment. The Samnameh poem was probably composed in the 14th century AD, making it one of the later epic poems inspired by the Shahnameh. There are many slightly different variations of the story in manuscripts of different lengths. Like the other epic poems and the Shahnameh, it was based on older oral stories and manuscripts. One version of the poem is essentially a copy of the Homeo Homeyun, a Persian love story written around the same time about a hero named Homey who falls in love with Homeyun, a Chinese princess. The Samnameh is a romance between Sam and a beautiful princess named Peridot, who is the daughter of the Fagfur, the title these Persian epics use for the emperor of China. So you can already see the similarity with the Homeo Homeyun. Interestingly though, in an older version of this story that is lost, the Chinese princess Peridot may actually be a fairy. Her name, Peridot, means peri girl or peri daughter. Peris are creatures in Persian mythology. Originally, in Zoroastrian times, they were viewed as being the nefarious female counterparts of demons. But over time, they lost this evil connection and were thought of as beautiful and benign creatures, more similar to Western fairy folk today. This was the view that was prevalent during the time of these Persian epics, so Peridot's name may actually be translated as fairy girl as well. What's more, in the Samnameh, the title given to the princess's imperial father, Fagfer or Fafur, is kind of similar to the beginning of the name Farturtush. Farturtush is the name of a fairy king in a poem about a different hero's adventures. In that poem, Farturtush lived and presumably ruled in Mazandaran and Gorgsaran. These two regions are inhabited by Deevs and Peris, and is where Sam spends most of his time off stage in the Shahnameh. So perhaps Peridot was originally a fairy princess living in Mazandaran or Gorgsaran, and Sam encountered her while he was campaigning in those two places. Besides these connections, in the Samnameh poem, there are also magical events that point to Peridot being more than just a human. During a hunt with his fellow warriors, Sam arrives at a mysterious castle where he sees a picture of Peridot. He falls in love with the image of the princess and decides he must find her. After the Persians leave the castle, it vanishes, and Sam's companions attempt to persuade him to not go searching for Peridot because they are scared of the magic and potential danger that this entails. Sam's comrades are unsuccessful, and Sam leaves alone to find his love. On his way, Sam kills a monster, a black-colored Deev, or demon, and travels by ship to a place called Kawar. There, he ascends the throne, and lives in such luxury that he stays there, forgetting about Peridot or his friends back in Persia. But one day, Sam dreams about Peridot and remembers the purpose of his quest. He sets out again and travels to China, defeating a giant and an evil sorcerer on the way, and finally arriving at the Fagfur's palace. When Peridot sees Sam, she also falls in love. But the Fagfur, the emperor of China, objects to their relationship. He does not want his dear daughter to marry this strange foreigner from a distant land. Hoping to kill Sam, he sends the hero on a series of dangerous adventures, but is surprised when Sam survives all of them. Interestingly, Peridot actually joins Sam on some of these quests. Even after the tasks are completed, the emperor still refuses to accept Sam and locks his daughter Peridot away. But Sam is not defeated. He breaks into the palace, rescues Peridot, kills the emperor, marries the princess, and becomes the new ruler of China. Eventually, he returns to Iran to resume his battles against Persia's enemies. This is the typical formula for Sam's admittedly few appearances in Persian literature. He is interrupted from leading the army, he goes and does something, and then he returns to leading the army once again. In the Samnameh, Sam is an adult, extremely capable warrior, but is presumably still a young man because he is not already married. In the Shahnameh, Sam is introduced as already an older man and a formidable general, famed for his skill at horse riding and wielding a mace during combat. In the Shahnameh, we don't get much of an idea of his life before this. There's no mention of Peridot or his adventures in China, but there is a part where he gives us a taste of his resume. Writing to the king, he recounts some of his exploits, how he defeated the Deevs of Mazandaran, how he has beheaded many of Persia's enemies, and how he has killed ferocious lions. Sam also describes the time he slayed a dragon living in the depths of the Kashaf River, in what is now the northeastern corner of modern-day Iran. Sam says that when he left to fight the dragon, everyone feared he would die, but he was able to avoid its fire and poison by using diamond-tipped arrows to seal the dragon's throat shut. He cracked open the dragon's head with his mace and waded back home through a river of its blood. But the dragon's flame had reduced the countryside to ashes, and Sam walked naked past the smoky shrubs because the dragon had burnt his armor to nothing. Yet for all his strength and prowess, Sam did not have any children, and he was very sad about this. One of the women in his harem had a face like the sun, cheeks like rose petals, and hair like musk. Sam loved her, and he hoped she would give birth to a child, and sure enough, some time passed, and she gave birth to a boy. The child was beautiful and healthy, but there was one problem. His hair was completely white. The women of the harem cried over this, and felt so much shame that no one told Sam about the boy's birth for an entire week. Finally, a brave nurse went to Sam. She told him a boy was born in the women's quarters. He had a body like bright silver and a face like paradise. His hair, though, was all white. Oh well, such is life. When Sam went to the women's part of the palace and saw the baby boy's white hair, he was filled with despair. He wondered if the baby was really the son of a Div, or even the evil spirit Ahriman, cloaked in human flesh. Sam fell to his knees and prayed to the Creator. If I have followed the ways of Ahriman, forgive me. I am shamed. What will I say when people ask about this boy, whose body is black but whose hair is white? He is a demon child. The boy was named Zal, a word that in Persian refers to albinos. Sam ordered the baby be taken far away and exposed to die. One of Sam's men took the boy deep into the Alborz mountains. He laid the baby boy on the ground, but did not kill him, and then returned to Sistan. Nearby was the Simorgh's nest. In Persian mythology, the Simorgh is a fabulous magical bird. In Iranian art, it resembles a peacock with the claws of a lion. She was very large and able to carry elephants and crocodiles in her talons. When her chicks were hungry, the Simorgh flew up from her nest and through the mountains, looking for food to bring back. She found a crying baby on the ground, naked and lying in a cradle of thorns. The Simorgh swooped down and picked up the baby in her talons, intending to take him back to her nest and feed him to her chicks. But when she was back in the nest, her and her chicks looked at the face of the baby human. They took pity on him and raised him as one of their own. Like with her own chicks, the Simorgh brought small morsels back to the nest and touched them to the baby's lips. In this way, she fed him, feeding him meat and blood instead of milk, until he had grown from an abandoned baby into a strong young man. Caravan drivers passing through the Alborz mountains would sometimes see this strange young man living among the trees. Rumors of him spread through the land until they finally reached Sam, the son of Nariman. One night, when Sam was asleep, he dreamed of a man galloping toward him on a horse. The man told him news about his son. When he awoke, he could not remember, though, what was said. He summoned the priests and asked them to interpret his dream. The priests told him lions, leopards, and even fish and other strange creatures of the sea all love and care for their children. But Sam did not do this. He had abandoned his son to die. The priests urged Sam to pray to the Creator and repent for the terrible thing that he had done. The following night, a worried Sam went to sleep and had another dream. In this one, he saw a banner fluttering on a mountaintop. A young man came forward leading a large army. A Zoroastrian priest, called a Mobad, walked on his left, and a sage walked on his right. One of them came forward and spoke to Sam. "What use is being a hero of royal blood if you need a bird to raise your son? Why is it shameful to have white hair? Your beard is white, and your hair is too, and yet you despised your son and left him to die." Sam woke in a cold sweat. He immediately called his counselors and commanders and ordered them to set off with him for the Alborz mountains, to find what he had rejected so many years before. After trekking through the countryside, Sam came to a high mountain whose peaks disappeared in the clouds. On the slopes was the Simorgh's nest, a fearsome construction like a palace made of ebony and sandalwood. When he saw it, Sam bent down and bowed his face into the dirt, giving thanks to the Creator. He looked for a way to climb the mountain, searching the ground for animal trails that he could follow. High above, the Simorgh watched Sam move below. She turned to Sam's son and told him he had endured growing up in the nest, but that now his father had come to the mountain to fetch him. The Simorgh told him that it was time to go, but she gave him some feathers to keep and said he would always live under her protection. If any trouble came his way, he could throw one of the feathers into a fire, and the Simorgh would appear in a black cloud to take him to safety. With that, the Simorgh lifted Sam's son out of the nest, soared through the clouds, and brought him to the base of the mountain. When Sam saw him, he wept. The youth's white hair reached his chest. His chest was like a lion's. his cheeks red and rosy like blood. Sam bowed before the Simorgh, clapped his son in a war cloak, and they set off back to Sistan. Meanwhile, Manuchehr, the king of Persia, heard about Sam's return from the mountains. He sent his son Nozar to go to Sam and congratulate him, and tell him that Sam should come to Manuchehr so the king could see the youth who had been raised in the Simorgh's nest. Nozar reached Sam and told him about Manuchehr's wishes. Sam then humbly headed for the royal capital straight away. At the palace, Manuchehr welcomed Sam and sat him next to his throne, while Gawron sat on the other side. When they were seated, the chamberlain ushered in Sam's son Zal, who was now dressed in fine clothes and crowned with a circlet of gold. The king stared in wonder, and he recognized the royal far that radiated from Zal as a sign of the Creator's blessing. He told Sam to treasure his son, and Sam told Manuchehr why he had decided to abandon the boy years before, and how the Simorgh had raised Zal instead. He told Manuchehr about his deep regret and his quest to find his son after he had already become a young man. Manuchehr was deeply interested in Zal's background. He ordered his sages and priests to divine Zal's fate. They studied the stars and declared Zal would be a famous champion, known for his intelligence and his fine horsemanship. Manuchehr and Sam were overjoyed to hear this fortune. They celebrated, and Manuchehr gave Sam numerous gifts including robes, saddles, swords, silks, carpets, jewels, and servants to carry everything. He then wrote a great charter, granting Sam lordship over Kabul and Zabolistan, also known as Sistan, which he actually already ruled over. These Persian kings have a tendency of doing this throughout the Shahnameh, granting land to nobles that the nobles already control. Basically, what the kings are doing here is confirming the nobles' right to rule. Manuchehr also made Sam his chief warrior, his Jahan Pahlavan. After he received these gifts, Sam bowed to the king and kissed his throne. He praised him as a lord of justice and righteousness, and then he and Zal set out for Sistan. Back home, Sam assembled his nobles and loyal retainers. He told them of Manuchehr's latest orders to lead an army to invade Gorgsaran and Mazandaran. He said once again he and his son would be separated, because Sam would leave Zal behind to rule Sistan in his absence. Sam told his nobles to advise Zal well. He told Zal to act justly and generously. He gave him the keys to the treasury. But Zal was upset. He asked his father how he could accept being separated once again, when they had already been separated for so long. Sam told him that the stars had decreed his fate, and he should gather a group of men eager for knowledge and learn from them all kinds of things. In that way, he would embark on the path to being a just ruler. With that advice given, Sam hugged Zal tightly and cried, and then he gathered his forces and set off to war. Now, left to rule, Zal thought about how he could rule and live in a good way. He sat on Sam's ivory throne and summoned sages and wise men, but also warriors and horsemen from all across the world. All day and night he sat with these guests, discussing all sorts of subjects. Important ones, but also trivial ones. Soon Zal was like a shining star with his knowledge. He was a man with talents beyond those of other mere mortals raised by human parents. What I've just told is what the Shahnameh says about the birth of Zal. For the rest of this episode, I want to talk about the various elements of this story and how they appear in the earlier Persian literature. The Bundahishni, a Zoroastrian religious text dating to the 8th century AD, does not tell about Zal's strange birth. It also says that Sam did not have only one son. According to the text, he had 6, and divided the various lands he ruled between them. Sistan went to his oldest son Dastan. It should be noted, though, that Dastan is an alternate name for Zal in the later literature. The raised by a bird idea may have been inspired by an earlier story. In the 3rd century AD, the Roman writer Aelian wrote the De Natura Animalium, a large multi-book work that told various stories he had collected. In this document, he recorded a story about the Persian ruler Achaemenes, the legendary ancestor of the real-life Persian king Cyrus. Aelian says Achaemenes was raised by an eagle, kind of similar to Zal. Aelian may in fact have had a knack for recording ancient lore. He is also the only Greek or Roman writer to mention the far more ancient mythic figure Gilgamesh from Mesopotamia. The Simorgh, the beautiful giant bird that raised Zal, has a much clearer link to the older Persian material. The name Simorgh comes from the Avestan word Sena. As a reminder, before the Arab conquest of Persia, the state religion of the earlier Persian empires was Zoroastrianism, and the Zoroastrian religious texts were written in the Avestan language, a sacred language used by priests that was more widely spoken over 3,000 years ago. As I've mentioned before, the Zoroastrian texts give details on what ancient Iranians thought about the world. The Avestan Yashts record that the Sena bird built its nest in a large tree that grew out of the ocean. By the end of the Sassanid era, in the 6th century AD, the Simorgh had a savior role and was closely tied with Zal and his family. There was also an evil bird called Kamik that opposed the Sena. It used its large wingspan to block rain from falling to earth, causing the ground to dry out and the crops to die. Kamik also terrorized, gobbling up people and farm animals. In the Minoan Crad, Kamik is killed by the monster slayer hero Karsasp, the original name of the hero Garshasp, who I've talked about a lot on the pod already. Centuries later, when the Shahnameh and other epic poems were written, we may still have this evil version of the Simorgh. In some of these poems, a bird also called Simorgh appears. But this Simorgh, even though it has the same name, is not the friendly Simorgh that looked after Zal. This one lives on a mountain and swoops down to kill any passers-by, whether they be large animals like elephants or traveling humans. It serves as an obstacle on heroes' quests, and reminds me of the large terrifying rock birds in the 1001 Arabian Nights tales. The Simorgh also appears in the folk tales of Iran's neighbors. In an Armenian story, the Simorgh equivalent, called Simir, carries a hero out of the underworld. She takes him to her nest, and he protects her chicks from a ravenous snake, and she responds by protecting him. In a Kurdish folktale, another hero also saves the Simir's chicks from a snake. The Simir rewards the hero by giving him 3 of her feathers and is told that if he burns them, she will arrive to help. Later, the hero in this story does just this, and is carried by the Simir to safety. This is exactly what the Simorgh does with Zal in the Shahnameh, but the context of the gift is different. Nevertheless, this shows that these simple stories were playing with something much more widely known. Before ending this episode, I want to return to the character Sam. He is a strange figure. He's important, but someone who lives off stage. He has minimal appearances in the Shahnameh. He was the focus of his own epic poem, but that poem came late and may have ripped off other works. Many of the characters I've already covered in this season of Myth Madness also appear in the Avesta. Sam does not. It's almost like he was added in later. Well, what if I told you he probably was? In the earlier Zoroastrian times, the hero Garshasp, or Karshasp, is sometimes named Sam, for example, in the Bundahishni, and he also uses the epithet Naryamana, meaning having a heroic mind. By the time the Shahnameh and later epic poems were written, Karshasp was split into 3 different characters: the grandfather, father-son trio, Garshasp, Nariman, and Sam, probably due to confusion over the different names. This is probably why none of these 3 appear much in the Shahnameh. The adventures linked to Karshasp were split between the 3, and all his original uniqueness was removed. And that's all for today. Thank you for listening, and tune in next time when I continue with more stories from the Shahnameh.